Right after the breakup, she truly believes she's fine without you. In her mind, the decision feels correct, empowering, even liberating. This is the phase most men completely misunderstand because they assume her confidence means certainty. In reality, what she's experiencing is not clarity, it's relief. Emotional relief, the relief of escaping discomfort, tension, expectations, and responsibility. When a relationship ends, especially one where emotions were intense, the nervous system relaxes. That relaxation feels like happiness, but it isn't the same thing. It's simply the absence of pressure. An absence of pressure can easily be confused with freedom. In the early days, she wakes up without having to explain herself, without arguments, without emotional accountability. There's no need to compromise, no need to reassure, no need to deal with your moods, needs, or expectations. That alone creates a powerful illusion. I'm better off. Her friends reinforce it. Social media reinforces it. And her own emotions reinforce it. She feels lighter. She feels in control again. And because emotions create perception, she assumes this feeling will last. That's where the illusion begins. This is also why she may appear unusually cold, distant, or even dismissive. She's not necessarily heartless, she's emotionally anesthetized. The emotional bond hasn't disappeared, it's temporarily suppressed by relief. When pressure leaves, emotions don't rush in immediately, they wait. And during this phase, she often rewrites the past to justify her decision. She focuses on your flaws, your mistakes, your weak moments. She magnifies them because doing so protects her ego. If she convinces herself that you are the problem, she doesn't have to feel guilt, doubt, or fear. At this stage, she often tells herself and others that she's finally choosing herself. That phrase sounds empowering, but it usually masks avoidance. Avoidance of emotional work, avoidance of uncertainty, avoidance of facing whether the grass is actually greener or just looks greener because it's new. And because she's not yet emotionally tested by time, she confuses this temporary emotional high with long term happiness. This is where most men make their biggest mistake. They see her confidence and panic. They assume she's already moved on, or I'm losing her forever. That fear pushes them into chasing, explaining, apologizing, negotiating, and begging. Ironically, this behavior does the exact opposite of what they want. Instead of creating attraction, it validates her decision. Every emotional text, every long explanation, every attempt to change her mind sends one clear message: you were right to leave. I am unstable without you. From her perspective, your emotional reaction confirms her sense of freedom. She feels even more certain because you're demonstrating dependence while she's experiencing relief. The more you try to pull her back during this phase, the more you anchor her in the belief that leaving was necessary for her emotional well being. She doesn't feel lost, yet she feels escape. Another important truth here is that attraction doesn't disappear overnight. Emotional bonds fade slowly, not instantly. But when relief dominates, attraction goes dormant. It doesn't die, it hibernates. Time hasn't activated the part of her that misses you yet. That part only emerges after the novelty of freedom wears off, and novelty always wears off. Always. In the beginning, she fills the space quickly. Friends, social media, distractions, new attention, maybe even a new guy. These distractions keep her from sitting in silence long enough to feel the absence of what you provided. She doesn't miss the relationship yet because she hasn't lived without its benefits long enough. Emotional safety, familiarity, consistency, and masculine leadership only become valuable when they're gone for a while. What's critical to understand is that her early confidence is fragile. It relies on momentum. As long as life keeps moving, as long as she's busy, as long as validation keeps flowing, she feels fine. But this state is unsustainable. Life slows down. Nights get quieter. Excitement fades. And when that happens, the mind begins to reflect. This is why no contact works, not as a tactic, but as a mirror. When you remove yourself completely, you stop feeding her relief. You stop confirming her decision. You stop giving her emotional stimulation tied to you. At first, she enjoys the silence. It feels peaceful. But peace without depth eventually becomes emptiness, and emptiness invites reflection. Another subtle factor is comparison. Early on, she doesn't compare because she doesn't feel the need to. She's not evaluating her decision yet. But once enough time passes, comparison becomes inevitable. She compares how she felt with you versus how she feels now. She compares how other men show up versus how you showed up. She compares stability to excitement, depth to novelty. That process cannot begin while you're chasing her. It only starts when you're gone. There's also an ego component at play. Initially, she wants to believe she's strong enough to walk away and be perfectly fine. Admitting doubt too early would feel like weakness. So she doubles down emotionally. She convinces herself she's happier. She convinces herself she doesn't miss you. But ego defenses weaken with time. When emotions settle, honesty returns. It's important to understand that this phase is not permanent, but it is necessary. She has to experience life without you to truly evaluate what she lost. If you interfere with that process, you delay it. You become background noise instead of contrast. You become emotional clutter instead of absence. Meanwhile, your role during this phase is not to wait, hope, or suffer. It's to stabilize yourself, to regain emotional control, to detach your identity from her validation. Because the irony is this: the more composed and self directed you become, the more powerful the contrast later on. When she eventually looks back, she won't remember your begging. She'll remember your strength or your weakness during separation. And strength is what creates regret, not neediness. Time is the great revealer, but only if you let it do its job. Early confidence after a breakup is like a sugar high intense, short lived, and followed by a crash. The crash doesn't come immediately, it comes quietly, slowly, often when she least expects it, and when it does, it's not your words she remembers, it's your absence, your composure, and the version of you she can no longer access. That's why the illusion of being fine without you is so convincing at first, because it hasn't been challenged yet. Time hasn't asked the hard questions. Loneliness hasn't whispered yet. Comparison hasn't begun, and regret hasn't surfaced. All of that comes later, and whether you are still attractive when it does depends entirely on how you handled this first phase. When you step back instead of chasing, something subtle but powerful begins to unfold. At first, it doesn't look like progress. In fact, it often looks like you're losing. There are no messages, no emotional reactions, no visible signs that she's thinking about you. That silence can feel brutal, especially if you're used to constant communication. But this silence is not emptiness, it's space. And space is where contrast is born. Most men believe attraction is created through effort through words, reassurance, explanations, and emotional persistence. In reality, attraction is often awakened through absence. Not forced absence, not manipulative silence, but calm withdrawal. When you stop trying to prove your value, you allow her to measure it on her own. And measurement only happens when something is no longer readily available. Initially, your absence feels like confirmation to her. She thinks, this is exactly what I wanted. There's no tension, no emotional demands, no conversation she has to navigate carefully. She experiences peace, and she assumes peace equals happiness. But peace without emotional engagement quickly turns flat. Human beings are wired for contrast. We understand value not by constant presence, but by difference. Light is only noticeable because of darkness. Comfort is only meaningful after discomfort, and connection is only appreciated after separation. When you're gone, you're no longer part of her daily emotional environment. That means she can no longer regulate her emotions through you. She can't vent to you, lean on you, or draw reassurance from your presence. At first, she doesn't notice this loss consciously. But emotionally, something begins to shift. Small moments start to feel different. Things that once felt complete feel slightly hollow. That's the beginning of contrast. Contrast doesn't scream, it whispers. It shows up when something reminds her of you unexpectedly. A song, a place, a routine. These triggers don't cause immediate longing, they cause pauses. Moments where her mind drifts backward without intention. She doesn't chase the thought at first, she pushes it away. But the seed has been planted. What makes contrast powerful is that it bypasses logic. You could explain your value 1,000 times and it would never land the way absence does. Words invite debate. Silence invites reflection. When you're not there to defend yourself or reshape the narrative, her mind fills in the gaps, and those gaps often soften the story she once told herself to justify leaving. This is where the emotional recalibration begins. Without your presence reinforcing her relief, she starts to feel the full weight of her choice, not in a dramatic way, but in subtle emotional shifts. The excitement of independence fades. The validation she receives elsewhere feels shallow. Conversations lack depth. And slowly she realizes that what she lost wasn't just a person, it was a feeling. Another crucial element of contrast is unpredictability. When you chase, you're predictable. She knows you'll respond, she knows you're emotionally available. That predictability removes mystery, and mystery is essential to attraction. When you disappear calmly, without hostility or pleading, you become an unanswered question. And unanswered questions occupy mental space. She starts to wonder how you're doing, whether you're moving on, whether you're happier, whether you've changed. These thoughts don't arise because you asked for them. They arise because your absence disrupted her emotional expectations. She expected pain, drama, and pursuit. She got silence and strength instead. That contradiction unsettles her certainty. Contrast also reshapes power dynamics. During the relationship, emotional power may have tilted toward her, especially if you were more invested or reactive. When you step back, that balance begins to correct itself. You're no longer chasing her approval. You're no longer seeking closure or validation. You're centered in yourself. That self containment is deeply attractive, even if she doesn't consciously recognize it yet. One of the most misunderstood aspects of this process is time. Men often expect immediate results. They think if absence works, she should reach out quickly. But emotional processing doesn't operate on schedules. The mind needs repetition, it needs quiet. It needs moments of boredom and stillness before deeper emotions can surface. That's why trying to check in resets the entire process. One message can erase weeks of internal reflection. As time passes, contrast intensifies. The more she experiences life without you, the clearer the comparison becomes. She remembers how she felt with you, not just the arguments or problems, but the emotional safety, the laughter, the familiarity. Memory softens edges. Pain fades faster than comfort. And because you're not present to disrupt this process, nostalgia begins to work in your favor. This is also when she begins to reinterpret the past. The flaws she once magnified shrink. Your strengths become clearer. The relationship starts to feel more balanced in her memory. This doesn't mean she suddenly wants you back. It means the emotional narrative is changing. And emotional narratives drive behavior far more than logic. Another layer of contrast comes from your growth. When you're not chasing, you have energy to invest elsewhere: your work, your body, your purpose, your discipline. Even if she doesn't see this directly, she senses it indirectly. Confidence has a frequency. Self respect shows in posture, tone, and decisions. If she does encounter you later, the difference will be undeniable. But even before that, the idea of you evolving without her challenges her original assumption that you needed her to be okay. Contrast also removes emotional clutter. When you stop engaging, there's no new drama to distract from the core emotions, no arguments to reopen wounds, no mixed signals to confuse things, just space. And in that space, truth rises. Not the truth she told herself to feel strong, but the quieter truth beneath it. Importantly, absence is not punishment, it's not manipulation, it's self respect. You're not withdrawing to make her miss you, you're withdrawing because chasing devalues you. The irony is that when you choose yourself, you become more desirable. Not because of tactics, but because you're aligned with your own worth. Eventually, contrast reaches a tipping point. She may not even realize when it happens. It might come as a fleeting thought, a moment of sadness, or a sudden curiosity. But something shifts from "I'm fine without him" to "something feels missing." That moment is powerful because it's internally generated. You didn't cause it, you allowed it, and when contrast has done its work, any future interaction changes. If she reaches out, it's not from relief, it's from curiosity, nostalgia, or emotional uncertainty. The power dynamic is different, the tone is different, the opportunity is different. None of that could happen if you had stayed present, explaining, pleading, or trying to convince her. Contrast is slow, it's quiet, it doesn't announce itself, but it is relentless. And once it begins, it cannot be undone by time only, by you breaking it prematurely. That's why restraint is strength, silence is strength. And self control during separation is the very thing that gives your absence meaning. When she moves on quickly or starts seeing someone new, it often looks like proof that she was right to leave. From the outside, it can feel final. She seems happy, distracted, validated. And for you, this is usually the most painful phase, because it creates the illusion that you've already been replaced. but what's actually happening beneath the surface is far more complex and far less permanent than it appears. Most replacement relationships are not built from desire, they're built from avoidance. After a breakup, emotions don't disappear, they seek regulation. And the fastest way to regulate uncomfortable emotions like doubt, loneliness, or insecurity is through novelty. A new person provides distraction, validation, and temporary excitement. That doesn't mean she's deeply connected. It means she's temporarily insulated. In the early stages, a new connection feels intoxicating. Everything is light. There's no shared history, no unresolved tension, no emotional baggage. She feels seen, wanted, and desired again. This reinforces the belief that she made the right choice. She tells herself, "See, I'm fine. I didn't lose anything." But this confidence is borrowed. It's not rooted. It depends entirely on external stimulation. What she doesn't realize yet is that novelty is not substance. Excitement is not depth. Attention is not safety. These things feel similar at first, but time exposes the difference. And time is the one variable rebound relationships cannot outrun. At first, she compares nothing. She's too distracted, enjoying the rush of being wanted. But as weeks turn into months, patterns emerge. The new guy's flaws surface. His inconsistencies show. His emotional leadership or lack of it becomes visible. This is when unconscious comparison begins. She doesn't sit down and think, my ex was better. It happens emotionally, quietly, without language. She notices how conversations feel different, how she doesn't feel as understood, how she doesn't feel as grounded. She notices what's missing before she realizes what she's comparing it to. Emotional depth is always recognized in its absence, never in its presence. Another important truth is that many men perform well at the beginning. They say the right things. They show effort. They're attentive. But sustained masculine presence is rare. Consistency over time is rare. Emotional stability under pressure is rare. And these are the qualities that only reveal themselves after the honeymoon phase ends. As reality settles in, the emotional excitement fades. Validation becomes routine, attention loses its charge, and now she's left with the actual person, not the fantasy. This is where replacement relationships struggle. They were never meant to last, they were meant to numb. This is also when she starts remembering you differently. Memory is selective, and distance reshapes it. The pain associated with the breakup dulls, but the comfort associated with the breakup dulls, but the comfort associated with the relationship lingers. She remembers how you showed up, how you handled situations, how she felt safe, grounded, or understood in ways she didn't appreciate before. Not because you were perfect, but because you were real. What accelerates this process is your absence. If you're not chasing her, not reacting, not competing, you become a silent benchmark. You're not part of the chaos. You're not emotionally reactive. And that contrast sharpens the comparison. She sees the difference between attention and presence, between excitement and leadership, between novelty and substance. Replacement relationships also expose emotional truth through conflict. When tension arises with the new guy, she unconsciously expects the emotional maturity she once experienced. If it's not there, disappointment deepens. And disappointment doesn't create anger, it creates reflection. Another factor that's often overlooked is exhaustion. Starting over emotionally takes energy. Performing, impressing, explaining yourself again, it's draining. At first, she doesn't feel it. But over time, she begins to miss the ease she once had with you. Familiarity, when healthy, is comforting, and comfort becomes valuable only after it's lost. It's also important to understand that not all realizations lead to action immediately. She may recognize that the new relationship isn't fulfilling, but that doesn't mean she reaches out right away. Ego resists reversal. Pride resists admission. It's easier to stay silent than to confront regret, so she sits with it, processes it, tries to rationalize it away. But emotional truth doesn't disappear because it's inconvenient. It waits, and it grows. Meanwhile, your role during this phase is not to monitor her life or interpret every sign, it's to continue building yourself. Because the most powerful realization she can have is not just that the new guy isn't you, but that you've grown beyond who you were when she left. Growth redefines memory. It transforms you from the past into the missed opportunity. If she does reach out, it's rarely dramatic. It's subtle, a casual message, a question, a check in. This is not confidence, it's curiosity mixed with doubt. And that doubt exists only because the replacement failed to deliver what novelty promised. But here's the deeper truth. Even if she never reaches out, the realization still happens. Replacement relationships teach lessons whether they end or not. They reveal what she truly values. They expose what she lost. And they strip away the illusion that happiness is easily replaced. Time doesn't punish her, it educates her. It shows her that emotional depth cannot be rushed, that masculine presence is rare, that safety and excitement don't have to be opposites, and that walking away from something real often feels empowering only until reality asks for substance. For you, understanding this removes desperation. You stop seeing her moving on as rejection and start seeing it as a process you no longer need to control. You realize that chasing wouldn't have saved anything, it would have cheapened it. And that peace allows you to stay grounded, composed, and centered. Replacement relationships are not proof that you were forgettable. They're proof that she was avoiding the work of letting go. And avoidance always collapses under time. The final shift happens not because of what she does, but because of who you become. This is the part most men overlook, yet it's the most decisive. While time works on her emotions, it works on you too. And if you use it correctly, you no longer sit in a position of waiting or hoping, you move into a position of strength. And strength changes everything, whether she returns or not. After separation, there's a fork in the road. One path leads to stagnation, obsessing, replaying memories, checking her social media, attaching your self worth to whether she reaches out. That path keeps you emotionally stuck in the past. The other path leads to growth, self discipline, purpose, clarity, and emotional mastery. This path doesn't numb pain, it transforms it. And transformation is what creates a new version of you that time cannot ignore. At first, growth feels unnatural. You're improving yourself while emotionally hurt. You're lifting, building, learning, focusing while part of you still wants answers. But discipline doesn't require motivation, it requires commitment. And commitment to yourself is the first signal that your identity is no longer tied to her validation. As weeks pass, something important happens internally. Your nervous system calms, your emotions stabilize. You stop reacting to every thought of her. You begin to enjoy moments again, not because she's back, but because you're back in yourself. This internal shift is subtle but powerful. You're no longer trying to fill a void, you're building a foundation. This is where real masculine confidence is formed. Not the loud, performative kind, but the quiet, grounded kind. The kind that doesn't chase attention. The kind that doesn't seek reassurance. The kind that knows its value without needing it mirrored back. This confidence changes how you move, how you speak, how you decide. And whether she ever sees it or not, it exists. Ironically, this is also when you become most attractive to her. Not because you're trying to be but because you're no longer trying at all. Emotional self sufficiency is magnetic. It signals safety, leadership, and maturity. It tells the world, I can lose and still stand. And that energy is rare. If she does observe you from a distance through mutual friends, social media, or chance encounters, she notices the difference. You're not frozen in the version she left. You're not begging for the past. You're forward moving. And that disrupts her original narrative. She left believing you would struggle, decline, or stay emotionally tethered. Your growth challenges that assumption. Even if she never consciously acknowledges it, this shift affects her emotionally. It reframes the breakup. Instead of I outgrew him, it becomes he grew without me. And that realization carries weight. It introduces uncertainty. It invites reflection. It creates a sense of loss that wasn't there before. But here's the most important truth. Your growth is not a strategy to get her back. It's a commitment to yourself. And because it's authentic, it frees you from outcome dependence. You stop measuring success by whether she returns. You measure it by how aligned you feel with your purpose, your standards, and your self-respect. This is why, if she does return, the dynamic is completely different. You're no longer the man seeking approval. You're the man evaluating alignment. You listen more than you speak. You observe more than you react. You're not trying to convince her of your worth. She's already feeling it. And because you're no longer attached to the outcome, you don't sabotage the moment with neediness. And if she doesn't return, the outcome is still a win. Because the version of you that emerges from this process is stronger, clearer, and more grounded than before. You attract better opportunities, better relationships, and better experiences. Not because you're chasing them, but because you're prepared for them. Time proves her wrong in a way words never could. Not by punishment, not by revenge, but by evolution. She may realize she underestimated you. She may realize she lost access to a man who grew into his strength. Or she may simply fade into the past. Either way, the proof exists in your life, not her regret. Growth also rewrites your own story. You stop seeing the breakup as rejection and start seeing it as initiation, a moment that forced you to confront weakness, build discipline, and define yourself without external validation. And once that identity shift happens, you never fully return to who you were before. This is the paradox. The moment you no longer need her to see your value is the moment your value becomes undeniable. And that's not something time can take away. It can only reveal it. In the end, whether she comes back or not becomes secondary. Because you've already reclaimed what mattered most: your direction, your confidence, and your self respect. And that's the outcome that lasts long after emotions fade and time moves on.